So, my job on YouTube, my responsibility on YouTube is to talk to you guys about Metroid at any possible turn that I get. And today we actually have a really interesting and exciting piece of news surrounding the Metroid franchise to discuss. And there are some ways that, if you stretch your imagination, we could kind of sort of connect it to future Metroid games, which of course I will be discussing in this video. But what we're really focusing on is this recent random announcement of a Metroid Prime Trilogy art book releasing next summer. This was randomly announced this past week from a company called Piggyback that I hadn't previously heard of, but apparently making really detailed, high-quality books and art books and video game guides is what they do. So, silly me, I guess, for not even knowing that they existed, but I didn't know that they existed. However, once they announced this crazy Metroid Prime Trilogy, huge, awesome-looking art book, obviously it made it to my eyes and ears right away, which got me extremely excited. So, before I start talking about the bigger picture stuff, let's just quickly go over some of the details about what this book is going to contain. This is their description right from their website. You can see it's titled Metroid Prime 1, 2, 3, A Visual Retrospective. It's the art and making of the Metroid Prime trilogy. And they describe it saying, developed in collaboration with Nintendo and Retro Studios, this art book showcases concept drawings, sketches, and assorted illustrations from the Metroid Prime series. With an extensive range of behind-the-scenes, high-quality artwork, this hardcover anthology spans more than 20 years of Metroid Prime development and includes exclusive commentary from Nintendo producer Kensuke Tanabe, which is very exciting, by the way, as well as the esteemed Retro Studios. It's printed on premium sheet fed art. What is that? Printed on premium sheet fed art paper? I've never heard of that. I don't know what that means. But it clearly sounds very nice. Stitch bound, and it's got an etched Samus metallic foil cover. A couple of bullet point features they list. It's going to cover Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3, and Metroid Prime Remastered, which is pretty cool. There's a foreword by Metroid Prime producer Kensuke Tanabe. Features a vast array of high-quality art and sketches from developers, exclusive Retro Studios penned introduction to each game. I love that. Dozens of producers' notes that offer commentaries, insights, and anecdotes on the artwork. And again, they discuss just kind of the high-quality nature of the actual book itself. So, wow. This is super amazing. And it's not the kind of thing that we normally would see for the Metroid franchise. I think that's one of the biggest shocks around all of this and why it was such a whiplash feeling to see something like this being created, because outside of figures and collectible statues, and First 4 Figures being a company that's been very deep in Metroid stuff, outside of that, there's not really been a lot of these kinds of things for Metroid, just because the franchise isn't the hugest, most popular, most successful franchise in the industry. It is one of the oldest and most longest running. It has some of the most important impacts and influences on the gaming industry and a lot of people making games today and developing games. But again, this isn't a Zelda game. It's not a Mario. It's not a Pokemon. It's not a Halo. It's not a Grand Theft Auto or a variety of other franchises you could list. So you just don't normally see these things. And to see it, and the timing of it is very interesting, by the way. It's coming out next summer. Currently, you can pre-order it on Amazon. I'll have a link to that stuff below, just so you guys, it's not like an affiliate link. I don't get paid. I just want you guys to own it. I've already pre-ordered it for myself. But yeah, it's coming out next summer. On Amazon, it currently states July 31st, but that feels like a placeholder date. But I do think it's going to come out in July. And it's like $48, $50 or something. To me, that's a pretty good price for what this is. Maybe for some people, it's a lot of money. I think it's a good deal. I had no problem pre-ordering it. And, yeah, I'm just excited to see Metroid, and especially the Prime Trilogy, getting this kind of attention with a product like this. In fact, you know what this thing reminds me of? I'm sure a lot of us had the same thoughts. It reminded me of this bad boy. The Zelda Hyrule Historia, which, boy, this was a huge deal when this came out. This was, I think, pre-Skyward Sword, right? This was in the build-up to Skyward Sword, I want to say. So 2011. And it's an incredibly detailed, huge, massive, thick book. And this is where the first attempt at an official Zelda timeline from Nintendo came. Let's see how easily I can kind of just hold. I'm sure a lot of you guys have this. Where am I? Here I am. I'm sure a lot of you guys have this thing or have seen it before. Because like I said, it's 2011. It's over 10 years old. But it's really cool to see something like this come out for the Zelda franchise, which, again, for Zelda, you would expect it. This, to me, feels like the Metroid equivalent to this. Even though, set this thing down here, even though Hyrule Historia is covering more like Zelda at large, the whole franchise up to the point that that book released, this is focused on specifically the Metroid Prime kind of subset of games. And not even really that. It's clearly just the Prime Trilogy, and then also including Prime Remastered that came out last year, 2023. So this isn't covering the entire creation and development and history of Metroid back to the beginning. We're not talking about the number 2D games. We're just talking Metroid Primes 1, 2, and 3. Now, let's get to some of the meat of this conversation. Let's get to the brass tacks and what I think we all start to think about and get excited about. Even though we don't know if this is worth talking about, I'm going to talk about it anyway. Because if I'm not looking too deeply into a piece of Metroid news, then what the hell am I even doing on YouTube anyway? The big thing is, does this have anything to do with either Metroid Prime 4 and helping us understand a bit of a release date, or maybe some kind of promo material to get people excited about Metroid Prime 4? Or does it have to do with maybe the fact that they're going to be officially re-releasing Metroid Primes 2 and 3? Because that's been a big conversation since Metroid Prime Remastered released last year, is when are we going to see Primes 2 and 3? And even Jeff Grubb, who kind of first leaked that he knew Prime Remastered was going to be releasing, he discussed that a 2 and 3 kind of HD port was also in development. Maybe not the same treatment as Prime Remastered, but something that would be a re-release with HD graphics, and that they were going to exist. They were going to do the full trilogy no matter how they approached it. And we've heard nothing about Primes 2 and 3, and they've constantly been in the conversation. Are they going to release last year? Are they going to release this year? Are they going to release on the Switch 2? Are they going to release before Prime 4? Are they going to release as a package at some other point, separately or together? Will they do it, or are they going to ignore those games? And so when we see this book announced that is literally covering the Metroid Prime trilogy, and that does also include Metroid Prime Remastered, it obviously gets our gears a-turning. How does this impact Primes 2 and 3, and how does it impact Prime 4? So I think that there's more than a good chance, you guys, that this is nothing more than just what it seems on the surface. This is a book being released to just celebrate the Metroid Prime series and the Metroid franchise in a really cool, high-quality way. A love letter to the franchise and to the fans. And if that's all it is, I'm fine with that. Because I'm going to get all this great art and this anecdotes and this behind-the-scenes discussions and conversation even from Tanabe himself, in Nintendo about the making of these games. And for me, the making of my favorite game of all time, which is the original Metroid Prime. And I find it to be a great bonus that they're going to include Prime Remastered. When I was reading the initial kind of for the description, from the website that I read here in this video too, at first I was like, man, they say it's a hardcover anthology that spans more than 20 years of Metroid Prime development. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense, because Prime 1 was 2002 and Prime 3 was 2007. So that's only 5 years spanning the release of those games. And Metroid Prime, I don't remember when they started development, but it was only at, 4 or so years before Prime release. So like maybe 99 or so, 98, 99. I'm like, that's not 20 years. And so I got excited that maybe that meant it was going to have something to do with Prime 4, since we know that's coming out next year. But then I realized with the Prime Remastered stuff, they're probably referring to that, because it was 2002 for Prime 1, 2023 for Prime Remastered, so that's 21 years between those two releases. So I assume that that's what that means. No indication that it's going to cover Metroid Prime Federation Force or Metroid Prime Hunters or Metroid Prime Pinball, because there are those 3 portable Prime series releases as well. I'm willing to bet that they're going to be vaguely referenced here and there, but there's no description or call out of them here the way Prime Remastered is. So I just find that interesting. So anyway, like I said, there's a great chance that we don't need to look any deeper into this. It's just a book talking about these games. Great. I can't wait to buy it, own it, read it, and revisit it. It's going to be super cool. However, again, we get very excited as game fans and as Metroid fans about how this can lead us to more Metroid video games to play. And knowing that Metroid Prime 4 Beyond currently is targeted for 2025, and this book is targeted for summer 2025, and we all but know the Switch 2 is going to release in 2025 as well, it certainly seems like the stars are aligning. You know, where there's smoke, there's fire is the saying, right? And it seems like the smoke here is a lot of Metroid things happening in 2025, including a confirmed new game and now this book. And so is there any reason to think that the release of the book in July or summer of 2025 is either meant to coincide with the release of Prime 4, meaning maybe they would release at around the same time, meaning maybe Prime 4 is releasing in the summer, or maybe they want this to release ahead of Metroid Prime 4, maybe by a month or a couple of months, so that it adds into the hype and also the education of people about the Metroid Prime series and story to help prime them, no pun intended, for the release of Prime 4 Beyond, which maybe is going to happen over the fall or maybe late summer next year or holiday shopping season, right? All of these different things that start to feel like options on the table simply by the announcement of this really cool art book. And then, of course, the final piece to this, as I've already touched on here, is that this is celebrating the Prime Trilogy, which in the game universe is a prelude to Prime 4. And so if this is meant to be like a companion piece of marketing to Prime 4, like a book that primes you for going into that game, why wouldn't they also then fill the gaps between Prime Remastered and Prime 4 by also releasing Prime 2 and 3 in whatever way they decide to do it? There's like 5 different ways they could release those games, right? It's hard for me to really imagine, though, that this is just a book releasing on its own. I feel like 2025 is just going to be the year of Metroid, and this, to me, adds to that. Prime 4 will release. This Prime Trilogy super cool art book and history retrospective book is going to release. Why not also add Primes 2 and 3? And I like to think, this is me getting very ambitious and optimistic as a game fan, okay? So this is kind of a prediction, and it's based on nothing more than me being a fan. It's not a rumor and a leak or anything. But I still want to believe that the Switch 2 is going to release in the first half of the year. So why wouldn't Nintendo be saving Metroid Primes 2 and 3 Remaster to release, you know, Switch 2 is going to be backwards compatible, so maybe to release after the Switch 2 is out, so that the Switch 2 can be on the market, and we can play Prime 1, 2, and 3 Remastered once 2 and 3 get a re-release in some fashion. We can play those all on our brand new Switch 2 and enjoy the entire trilogy redone and remade and enhanced for a modern era and a new Nintendo generation. Then we get to read this book over the summer, and then in the summer or later in the year, Prime 4 will release. So I am kind of shifting some of my thoughts from the years prior, where I thought Prime 4 made sense for a Switch 2 launch. And while I still think that is possible, and there are reasons why I do still believe that would be a good idea, I'm definitely evolving my opinions every day and starting to understand maybe it does make sense for them to wait and release it after the Switch 2 launches. And Mario's the launch game, and Metroid Prime 4 comes out later for Switch 1 and Switch 2. And so that's kind of a cadence that I'm starting to fill in. Again, this is over-analyzing the existence of this book like crazy, and I'm acknowledging that. Like I said, maybe it's just a book and we're not supposed to connect it to games. But I want to connect it to games. I want to overanalyze it because it's fun and exciting. And so that's a timeline I'm playing out where first half of the year, the Switch 2 drops on the market, and that there is still time for that to happen. Primes 2 and 3 get some sort of remaster re-release after that. This book comes out, and then Prime 4 comes out. So you've got that cadence of like 4 events leading up to the release of Metroid Prime 4. And again, in the year of a new Nintendo generation, we also get a year of Metroid, where we can play all the Metroid Prime games, we can read this amazing new book, and we can play the brand new Metroid Prime game before the year is over. It's just, it is optimistic, and it is overanalyzing like crazy, but it is exciting, and like I said, the stars are aligning that it makes this feel kind of possible. So at the end of the day, none of us know if this means anything significant or if it's just an awesome product that us as Metroid fans get to buy and own and enjoy. Either way, I'm stoked for the book. Like I mentioned, I pre-ordered my own. I'll make sure to include a link to an article or something that'll take you to the Amazon page or to Piggyback's like website or whatever for purchasing it. I don't know if YouTube will flag things like Amazon links if they're not affiliate links. I have no idea. I don't do these things, so I'm just gonna link to an article that talks about it and has then a link to Amazon, so you can go and buy it just to play it safe. Like I said, I don't get paid nothing, man. I just want Metroid fans to have this darned book. And I don't know if it's going to be so hot of an item that it sells out or not, so give you guys a chance to get it if you haven't already. And now we wait to see if the year of Metroid is going to play out the way that I'm hoping. We get a couple of Metroid games, 2 and 3, we get this great book, and then, of course, the big mamma jamma, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I can't wait. The year of the Switch 2, the year of Metroid, it's going to be the greatest year ever.